This is Internet Marketing. Brought to you by Site Visibility at sitevisibility.co.uk. This is Internet Marketing. Before we start today, Site Visibility have another piece of shameless self-promotion because they've just released their 2020 PPC automation guide. It's completely free to download, and it'll help you get started with each of the new automation settings in Google Ads. So this includes smart bidding, responsive ad testing, dynamic search ads, and more. The best way to accelerate your PPC growth in 2020 is to start planning today. So download your guide for free at bit.ly, that's bit.ly/ppc-automation-guide. And just for those that don't know, dash means hyphen. I usually do this the other way around. A dash and a hyphen are the same things, I think. Right, today I'm joined by Andrea Fryrear, Agile Marketing Coach and co-founder of AgileSherpas. Andrea, how are you?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me.
And thank you so much for coming on. And whereabouts in the States are you?
I'm in beautiful Boulder, Colorado.
So that's towards the bottom, is it? Is it roughly in the middle?
Very much in the middle, like vertically and horizontally. We are smack dab in the middle.
And I know from experience, when I ask my American guests what the weather's doing, that you can never predict what it's doing in America. So what's the weather doing there right now?
It's gorgeous here right now. Boulder's actually pretty easy to predict. We have 300 days of sunshine per year, so that's usually a pretty safe prediction.
Wow. Sounds amazing. I'd love to go down there, actually. I'd love to see the Grand Canyon and all that sort of stuff. But I don't know, maybe I've been to New York so far, but maybe my next trip needs to be somewhere further in, as they say, further west. Right, let's start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and AgileSherpas.
Yeah, so AgileSherpas is a training and consulting organization. We are marketers who have sort of seen the light of agility and realized how much better our lives were once we started using it to manage our work. And so now we go around and try to help our fellow marketers translate Agile principles and practices to work in the marketing context. So we do trainings and we do coaching and consulting, really whatever needs to be done to kind of get Agile embedded inside of marketing organizations. I've been doing Agile marketing for about 5 years myself, and I'm just kind of a process nerd. I will geek out about how things get done all day, every day.
Amazing, because we last talked about Agile on this show. I'm pretty sure it was back in, I think it was January 2014, which is very close to 6 years ago. So it's about time we came back to it. I'm just thinking about the history actually of Agile within marketing. Am I right in thinking it first started showing up around about 2008, 2009? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's about right. That's probably the first time the phrase appeared kind of on the internet. And then you started hearing more and more about it. They wrote the Agile Marketing Manifesto in 2011, I believe, and then adoption has really sort of steadily improved since then.
And of course, Agile, the whole Agile thing, I'm a software developer. That's one of the other things that I do. So I'm very familiar with it in that sort of context. But I'm assuming that's where it came from.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, the first time I encountered it, I was working at a SaaS company here in Boulder, and we were trying to market the software produced by an Agile development team, and we were just getting our butts kicked day in, day out because they were so responsive and fast, and we couldn't keep up with our old school project management. And so I managed to convince everyone in the marketing department to give it a try, and that was my first sort of introduction to it.
And would you say that, today, here we are in 2000, right at the end of 2019, is it still on the up, or is it pretty well adopted sort of now within the marketing context?
We have quite a ways to go. AgileSherpas actually does a State of Agile Marketing survey and report every year, and we're working on the 2020 one as we speak, actually, but the 2019 numbers were only 32% adoption inside of marketing specifically. So we have quite a ways to go. I think that the state of Agile inside of software this year is something like 98%. So we have a ways to go to catch up to those folks, but it does seem to be steadily rising. And I think we're still kind of in the early adoption phase, but we'll, I think, kind of cross that chasm into really Agile becoming the standard operating model within the next couple of years.
Wow. I didn't realize actually, because it's still quite low at the moment then, isn't it? But I'd love to hear your story, because I want to come on to basically ways that some easy ways that folks can start experimenting with Agile marketing. We'll come on to that in a second, but would you be willing to share your story with us, how you sort of encountered it and how you started to adopt it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was running content marketing for a software company in Boulder. Survey Gizmo is the company I was with.
Yeah.
And like I said, we just could not keep up with the software development team. They're releasing multiple times per week updates to the code and updates to the product. And my poor writers were just getting annihilated because we couldn't keep pace with them.
Yeah.
And so one day I Googled Agile Marketing because I thought, if they're Agile and we're expected to maintain the same kind of release cadence and same level of adaptability, we should be using the same process. It just really makes sense. And so I went to our good friend Google, and Agile Marketing was like barely a thing at that point. And so I convinced my boss to let me go get certification as a Scrum Master and sort of whip my team into shape, so to speak, and take them into Agile ways of working. We evolved quite a lot from that point. We started using the Scrum framework at first, and then we very quickly moved on to more of like a flow-based sort of Kanban style and became more flexible in the framework as well. But it was just amazing to see what we were able to accomplish by doing that. And I wrote about it on our blog because I'm a content marketer and that's what I do. And more people started to reach out to me and say, hey, this is cool what you guys did. Could you help us do the same thing? To the point where I thought, I bet this could be my job, is just helping other people make this kind of leap. And so started AgileSherpas, and that's what I do now.
Fantastic. Now, you mentioned the Scrum word there, and a lot of our listeners, I'm okay with Scrum because I'm a software developer. Well, I'm supposed to know about it anyway, but a lot of our listeners might not be familiar with, you say it didn't work that well in marketing, but could you just quickly define roughly what Scrum is for our listeners?
Yeah, it's definitely the most common in the software world. It's essentially breaking your work down into small bite-sized pieces that can be accomplished within a couple of week time period called a sprint.
Yeah.
And so you do some planning at the beginning of that sprint process, commit to getting only that work done within a couple of weeks, and then heads down, hardcore focus on that work until the sprint is over. And then you stop and take a look and say, did we finish? What's still missing? How's the process working? Look back quickly, and then the next sprint begins immediately. So there's just this recurring cycle of short-term iterations. And it's very powerful because it forces you to think about what can I do in the next couple of weeks that will be valuable and useful, and then focus only on that work.
Yeah.
The problem for a lot of marketers is that the 2 to 3 week time horizon starts to feel like this arbitrary, deadline that's not be lining up with an event that they're running, or there's a webinar launching 2 to 3 days after the sprint. And so it seems like a weird, arbitrary line in the sand. And then we're also a very service-oriented group. And so sales asks us for things, and product asks us for things, and customer service asks us for things. And so the sprint can be quite hard to pin down, and it gets to be too flexible because things are coming in and going out, and then it's not really a sprint at that point.
And it sounds like, from what you said earlier, it sounds like you adopted a more, I like the word flowy, a more flowy approach based on a Kanban board. Sorry, another buzzword that agile marketers and developers know about. So Kanban board, this concept of tasks being cards on a board. Is that what you mean by Kanban board?
Yeah, so definitely the Kanban board, but then also thinking about how do we create focus through that visualized workflow. Using things like work in progress limits to say, as a team, we're not going to work on more than a handful handful of things, right? 5 or 6 things at a time. And then we can't start anything new until we finish one of those. And that's enormously powerful to just force work through the system. So you stop starting on 50 things and you actually finish things that are in progress.
Yeah.
And I think really that's what's been changing in the 5 or 6 years since you all had someone on the show to talk about Agile marketing, is this realization that we have to hybridize, that we can't just copy paste what's worked for other professions. We've got to be more adaptive and open to developing things that work for us.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, let's talk about some ways that people can start experimenting with Agile. And perhaps, if it's all right with you, Andrea, let's start with from a sort of team context. What would you say would be some good things to try?
Yeah, for the team, there are some straightforward things to begin. My favorite is the Kanban board, just the simple, straightforward, what do we need to work on, right? What's our to-do list, our queue of work, so to speak, and then the steps that we have to take to get it done. If you're a small, straightforward team that doesn't have a lot of steps, you can just have a board that's to do, doing, done.
Yeah.
If you have more handoffs, right, you have copy and design and publication or something like that, then those can be the phases of work on the board. But just getting it all out there where you can see it is massively powerful. And if you can just put sticky notes on a wall, perfect. If not, if you're distributed and you need a digital option, I'm a big advocate of Trello.
Oh, yes.
As a tool. Yeah, it's so easy to get started with. But I would say build the board and get all the work out there. And chances are you're going to realize, wow, we spend a lot of time doing stuff that maybe we shouldn't be doing, and we could get more value from our time if we did other activities instead.
Brilliant. So that's the Kanban board.
Yes, the Kanban board. And then kind of the engine that drives that whole thing is that prioritized to-do list that I was talking about.
Yeah.
And an Agile team would call it a backlog, but you can really call it whatever you want. Backlog sometimes has like a negative connotation of, work goes here and it never comes back out.
How about exciting things to do?
Yeah, for sure. Whatever you want to call it, exciting things to do. And then the important thing is to have it prioritized. So the top item is the most important. So we know we're going to do that next. And then it goes in a very strict progression down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't have 5 number 1 priorities. That's not the definition of a top priority.
Yeah, sure. So what about looking not so much at the team now, but more as a sort of individual contributor? What could be done there?
My absolute favorite thing to do, and I do this on my own, I have my own personal Kanban board where I keep all of my stuff that I have to do. And the best part of the whole board is the work in progress limit, or the WIP, WIP limit.
Yes.
And it's a very strict ceiling, right? So on my personal board, I'm the only person that works on it. And so I have a WIP limit of 2. I cannot be doing any more than 2 things at any given time.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I only do 2 things in a day, because when I finish one, I get to start a new one. But that is the only way that, as a business owner and an author and a coach, like, I have clients, I'm writing a book, I'm always traveling. And so that WIP limit is what forces me to push things through to completion instead of having 100 things in progress and nothing ever gets done. And if you do that as an individual, no matter what kind of work you do, it will get you through your to-do list so much faster. But it's this weird counterintuitive thing to say, I'm going to do less right now so I can do more over the course of a day or a week.
It's an incredibly, I was going to say agile, but that would be a really bad choice of word. Incredibly flexible tool, isn't it, the Kanban board? I mean, it can be, obviously it's being used in software development for a while. It's now being used in marketing, but I've heard individuals tell me that they've used it in their personal lives as well, especially the run up to Christmas, all the things that need to be done. So it's a great way of sort of knowing what your priorities are and partitioning sort of work up. Now, looking as perhaps a manager, a leader, how does that fit in with this sort of agile approach in the agile marketing arena?
Leadership has to change a lot really to make Agile successful. Leaders have to start getting over the need to micromanage people because the teams are much more autonomous. They've got their board, they've got their queue of work. And so they're good to go. They shouldn't need you there to tell them what to do from moment to moment. And so leadership then has to get comfortable thinking, how can I create conditions for that team to succeed? And so it's a shift in perspective from optimizing kind of individual quote unquote resources to supporting a team-centric system. And that can be quite a big shift for a lot of folks who have sort of climbed the ladder through traditional leadership approaches. And so just getting comfortable, giving the team autonomy and making sure they know what they need to do. Obviously, the setting of goals and long-term priorities is still a key aspect of leadership, but then to allow the team freedom to go and execute those ideas in the way that seems best to them is a big step towards a more agile environment.
I was going to say, I bet it is difficult. And also it's interesting because you mentioned that when you were first trying the more scrummy approach to Agile, one of the problems that kept cropping up was managers coming in and interrupting things and asking you to do things that weren't on your immediate list. I mean, are there some sort of ways that, we can teach our managers how to deal with an Agile approach to marketing?
My absolute favorite phrase for teams that I coach is, if you can't fix it, make it visible. And so if you can't immediately stop your leadership from doing that sort of swooping into the process, document the impact that it has. So when they throw a project at you in the middle of a sprint, let's say, that's added work. And that should be visualized on your board as something that was not planned and came in. It gets, a big red sticker on it or something. Yeah. And then at the end of the sprint, you can say, oh, look, we didn't finish these 3 things that we committed to doing because this project got thrown at us. And now we've been able to say to the leadership, here's the impact that your behavior has had on us. If you're okay with that, then, by all means, continue to behave that way. But if you would like us to commit to finish what we committed to, then you're going to have to wait until the start of the next sprint to make these kind of requests.
So, Andrea, I mean, if you had one encouraging thing you could say to our listeners today who might be thinking about taking a more agile approach to marketing, what would it be?
It is the most rewarding and sustainable approach to marketing that I've seen. It really helps people get out of this constant fire drill mode where everything is crazy urgent and we just race around from deadline to deadline to being able to feel like you're doing important work and that you're doing the right thing at the right time. It really helps individuals, and then that rolls up into higher performing teams, and that makes marketing more effective. It's great for everybody. It's win-win-win across the org chart, but you have to be quite diligent and rigorous in the application. It's not something you can sort of do halfway.
Well, Andrea, thanks so much for coming on and sharing that with us. How can our listeners find out more about you and more about Agile Sherpas?
Agile Sherpas is AgileSherpas.com. We have lots of free resources on there. We have a getting started guide that you can download for free that will walk you through in more detail some of these things like the backlog and the board and WIP limits. I also am fortunate in having a very unusual name. I'm very easy to find. Andrea Fryrear on LinkedIn, at Andrea Fryrear on Twitter, and I'm Andrea at AgileSherpas.com if you want to drop me an email.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. The show notes will be in the usual place, which is sitevisibility.co.uk/IM podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a review. That would be great. Questions and suggestions. The email is podcast@sitevisibility.co.uk. You can tweet at Site Visibility. We have a Site Visibility group on LinkedIn. So that's all from me, Andy. And it's all from Andrea.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andrea. And we'll see you next time on Internet Marketing.